Australia great. Others believe it threatens our national identity. It seems right now nothing divides opinion like multiculturalism. Our government insists it's working here, a shining example for the rest of the world. But in some countries, like Britain and Germany, they've declared multiculturalism a failure, a disastrous social policy that's torn communities apart. But let's be frank here. This debate isn't so much about race as religion, and a fear of one in particular, Islam.
Whenever I go out of the house, I wear this, just because I know the threat's real. It's not a joke. I know they're serious, I know there's killers within their religion, I know how seriously they take it.
Tommy Robinson is ready to fight for Queen and country.
This is bulletproof, yeah, bulletproof, stab-proof.
To defend the British way of life against an invasion he says has already begun. The spread of Islamic extremism. It's a cause he's prepared to die for.
There's no retreat, no surrender, and people aren't willing to surrender now, or willing to submit. We're not being beaten into silence.
As the head of a far-right organisation called the English Defence League, Tommy dares to shout what others fear to say out loud.
We are reintroducing patriotism.
That multiculturalism has provided the perfect cover for Islamic extremists to infiltrate Britain and plot their deadly attacks against democracy.
All we're doing is telling you how we feel, we're telling you what we see, we're telling you what's happening to our country. We're living side by side with terrorists, Islamists, people who want to completely obliterate our way of life and our culture and converge this country into an Islamic state. They're here.
What is this area, Tommy?
This is an Islamic ghetto. There's 19 mosques in this area.
To prove his point, Robinson took me on a tour of his hometown of Luton, an hour out of London.
I see a poster up ahead there, the Quran.
The Quran in English.
Once a stronghold of the English working class, it's now home to one of the UK's biggest Muslim communities and was the launching point for London's 2005 bombings.
So terrorism, you're saying terrorism comes out of this area?
Terrorism, this is terrorist area. This is the hotbed, this is the heart of militant Islam. This is where the 7-7 bombers, they boarded a train in Luton.
It's little wonder Robinson has been condemned by many as a racist and a thug. But his English Defence League has now spread to almost every city in Britain. And his claims gained credibility with many in Britain, with the recent national broadcast of this shocking footage, secretly filmed inside an Islamic school in Birmingham.
Yeah, we're not like the non-Muslim out there, and all that evil you see on the streets. They should hate walking down that street.
Children were shown being taught to hate the British way of life.
A person who's got less than a fistful here, then you should stay away from him the same way you stay away from a serpent or a snake.
The lesson literally beaten into them by their teachers. What do you think of extreme Islam?
It's a cancer, and it is embedded in every single Islamic community in this country. Every one of them. No matter what one you go to, there's a percentage of that community who wish for Sharia law, who are homophobic, who are anti-democratic, who are causing mayhem all across the country.
Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron recently declared that multiculturalism here had been a failure, and he directly blamed Muslim extremists. He said mosques like this may preach peace and tolerance, but there are many other hardline clerics who incite violence and hatred and division in the very neighbourhoods where they pray and live. In Australia, we might consider ourselves a multicultural success story. But here too, hardline Islamic fanatics spark fear and distrust of the wider Muslim community. Do you hate democracy?
I hate democracy. Absolutely. With my heart, my speech and my hands, as much as I can.
You're living in a democracy.
Well, unfortunately. I would love the majority of Australians to be Islamic.
If you believe Ibrahim Sadiq Conlon, Islam and multiculturalism can never coexist.
Muslims are oppressed right now. For example, our women find it hard to wear their veils or their burqas. We can't get mosques approved. We find it
He
hard.
says all true Muslims must adhere to the Islamic law, or Sharia, and fight to destroy any other political system.
So actually we're being oppressed by your current system.
You want to bring down the government?
Well, that's the aim of every Muslim, essentially. We have to, as every Muslim, we've been commanded to, as I say, hate any other system except Islam and work for it.
Sharia law in many ways is extremely strict. It seems almost medieval some ways.
Well, okay, yeah, we cut off hands. But I'll tell you what, we're going to be no people stealing. If you knew you were going to get your hand cut off, I'll tell you what, you ain't going to steal.
Surely there are moderate, reasonable Muslims.
As long as they love Sharia and hate democracy, that's fine.
They have to hate democracy.
They have to. You have to hate it.
Incredibly, these fanatical views are coming from a man born and raised in Australia. Ibrahim Sadiq was once Shannon Conlon.
We call for Sharia in Australia.
Since he abandoned Christianity 12 years ago, he's emerged as one of Australian Islam's most radical voices, promoting the rise of an all-powerful Islamic state through his group, Sharia for Australia.
Islam in Australia is getting stronger. That indeed the awakening is occurring.
The very fact that he lives in a democracy allows him to platform those views. So he needs to understand that it's actually the freedoms of this democracy that allows him to form an argument like that and to platform it. I wouldn't identify with that sort of ideology at all.
Would many Muslims identify with that?
Absolutely not. Not the ones that I know, anyway.
So, you know, there was a play about the Cronulla riots that...
Summer Hadid is among the vast majority of Australian Muslims who embrace our social diversity and agree with the federal government that multiculturalism has been a stunning success here.
I'd say I'm a product of multiculturalism, and so I find it quite interesting when people say that multiculturalism has failed. The majority of young Muslims, Australian young Muslims that I know, do not care for political Islamic or Islamist ideology. They're just going about their day-to-day existence, trying to contribute to their own professional fields, trying to, make their communities a better place.
So they're not out to force Islam onto everyone?
Not the ones that I know, and...
They're not out to turn Australia into an Islamic state?
Absolutely not. That's really my representation of the majority of Australian Muslims that I know.
But here in Britain, large numbers of Muslims make no secret of the fact that an Islamic state is their ultimate goal. Forget about the laws coming out of Westminster. There are already 100 Sharia courts delivering Islamic justice. And with the Muslim population growing at 10 times faster than any other group, Islamic extremists are no longer keeping their beliefs to themselves.
I don't agree with the British values of premixing.
But you are British.
A British passport is a mere
born and
document.
educated here.
I may be born here, but if I was born in a barn, it wouldn't make me a horse. My dear Muslims, we live in the time of fitna.
Anjem Choudary is the face of extreme Islam in Britain, and he's proud of it.
This is the downfall of Western civilization.
His views have made him one of the most vilified men in Britain. 2 Islamic groups he represents have been banned by the government.
No, you're Muslim first, you're Muslim second, and you're Muslim third.
So in fact, wherever there's a Muslim around the world, there'll never be multiculturalism because you don't agree with being multicultural.
No, multiculturalism is an anathema to Islam and Muslims. We don't believe that every culture can exist and can express itself within society.
How do you view someone like me, a young white Christian man, likes democracy, likes the society we live in?
Well, I think obviously that you're misguided. I would invite you to look at the Quran as the word of God. I believe that you're misguided. I would invite you to look at the Quran as the word of God and to embrace Islam, and God willing, you will attain paradise. But
where am I headed?
Well, if you die the way that you're dying, then you will go to the hellfire.
It is a ticking time bomb. That's exactly what it is.
If it continues like it is, do you think there'll only be more Anjem Choudrys?
There's going to be 100,000 Anjem Choudrys. We need Middle England to listen, to hear our voices, to help us with the struggle that we're living in.
There's no doubt Tommy Robinson's English Defence League is a growing protest force in Britain.
They want us to follow Sharia law, So it's a big problem in this country.
And tonight, in London's Fleet Street, we discover they're not just ranting hooligans. The country's comfortable middle class are signing up.
Is the English Defence League just working class lads like yourself who are racist?
We are a working class community, mainly working class lads, but we're trying to break into Middle England. As you can see today, from the people who are here, we've got a trader, we've got a computer IT expert, we've got a barrister, we've got a judge, we've got all different sorts of people coming together, and we will defeat Islamism in this country.
There's been an evaporation of our national identity, social cohesion has broken down, and there's parts of Britain that just don't feel like England anymore.
Thank you.
Leo McKinstry is a commentator and columnist who's long criticised British multicultural policy, which allows 500,000 immigrants into the country every year.
And we can't go on with this policy of saying you can come and live here, but you can cling completely to your own culture, the world you came from. You can still treat women badly. You can have Sharia law. That's no way to build a harmonious society.
I think if things were left the way they were and nothing changes, you're probably five years away from having English lads wanting to blow themselves up, because people are so angry about what's going on, so angry and so feel under threat and a complete oppression to do with Islam.
While they plot a new cultural course in Britain and deal with extremists on both sides, our government has taken a stand, declaring new support for multiculturalism.
Who has mums and dads or grandparents from other countries?
Immigration Minister Chris Bowen took me to Marion Public School in Sydney, where 90% of the students are from migrant families, but all proudly Australian. Who else knows what multiculturalism is?
All different cultures that get together and it doesn't matter what they are, like Vietnamese, they're still mates, like they're still friends.
Multiculturalism in Australia has been a very, very good thing, particularly when you see what's happening around the world. You see debates in Germany, in Great Britain, and France, and we just got to remind ourselves in Australia, multiculturalism has been an outstanding success. We've got it right. Other countries in the world struggle with it. We get it right.
You know, being Australian essentially, as we've pretty much said, centres around evils, drinking, culture, partying, freedom of nothingness, atheism. So if they want that, I say, fear Allah. You know, fear Allah. Come back to Islam before it's too late. You can never stop Islam. You will never ever stop it.
But if anything needs to stop, perhaps it's the extreme rhetoric, the hard line, the fundamental views that so quickly confuse the debate on multiculturalism.
If we ever want to work towards a multiculturalism that works for everyone, we need to stamp out racism, and we need to take a stand on religious prejudices, but also take a stand on those who, do peddle extremist views and say to them very clearly, you do not represent us.
Bloody well said. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks.
No worries. That's about as Australian as you get.
Absolutely. And they call me un-Australian, really. Come on. Yeah.
Coming up.
She's looking for the camera.
You're picking up a magic that you cannot capture with a normal camera.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
He's turned this car yard into a graveyard.
It's a foot!
Meet the killer who thinks